to celebrate the glorious return of the Mario Luigi RPG series on Switch with Brothership, and to put a nice little bow on all of my Mario Luigi retrospective videos, I wanted to finally get another game completely off my backlog, Tomato Adventure for the Game Boy Advance. A game that I have played little bits of over the years and did talk about in a main AntDude video on the main channel, but I never beat this game to completion. And why Tomato Adventure specifically? Well, it is the first game made by AlphaDream in direct partnership with Nintendo. You see, actually their first game is a Game Boy Color Japanese card-based RPG called Koto Battle Tengai no Moribito, but AlphaDream did that all by themselves. No direct ties to the big N whatsoever, so with nothing to influence Mario and Luigi with, let's just skip that. I feel like I'm not really missing much with that anyway. Tomato is a much more interesting game anyway because it's kind of like a testing ground for what other quirky RPG mechanics the developers can get away with in the future. Sort of like how the Frog for Whom the Bell Tolls was to Link's Awakening. And actually, on the topic of fun little facts, during the massive Nintendo data leak of 2020, a mostly complete Game Boy Color prototype of Gimmick Land was discovered, and yeah, it's like the entirety of Tomato Adventure with just less detailed graphics. Honestly, it's kind of insane. Like, it's not even all that interesting to talk about in depth because, quite literally, there aren't that many differences here. It's like the entire game just on weaker hardware, and that's kind of fascinating to me. I imagine the long-lost GBC version of Starfy is probably a pretty similar situation. Listen, alright, all I'm saying here is Tomato Adventure has some layers to it, it's pretty interesting all around, it didn't just show up out of nowhere, but enough blabbering, alright? It is 2025, I am one of the few bold enough to beat Tomato Adventure within the last decade, and today, I'm going to talk about it. And also, shout out to the team behind the fan translation, making this game easily accessible. It's an RPG, I don't want to play that with full Japanese, so thank you guys for that, because if Nintendo won't do it, the fans will. That's a good motto to live by. This is the land of kids, for kids, by kids. The Catch-Up Kingdom. If it's not totally established right out of the gate, yeah, this is a kids RPG. If you think that even the Mario and Luigi games are like very simplistic and just like big old beginner level RPGs, this game bumps up the simplicity like a whole bunch of notches. So any criticisms I have, just keep that in mind. This is a child's baby RPG, and I wouldn't have played it if I didn't have a big Nintendo backlog fascination. But here, in the Catch-Up Kingdom, you play as Demille, and you live in a school bus. You and a few other people are basically banished from the main kingdom because you don't like tomatoes. That's a crime clearly punishable by just not being allowed to have a good life. And you're locked in Kobor Village until your mind and attitude on tomatoes is changed. That's a weird plot. But one day, your girlfriend Passaran convinces you both to venture out into the dangerous toy ruins to find a special toy. But when you get to the fated location, the toy is gone, and these two weird purple guys, Bricky and Gricky, capture your girl and shoo you away. It turns out that King Abira, who was previously shown on a TV celebrating the holiday Tomato Day by showcasing his laser gun that transforms anything into dolls and toys, has a plan for Passaran. Throughout the story, you see Passaran being held captive, and they're trying to extract different emotions from her in order to harness the energy and power up some big old beam to turn everybody into toys. In order to save the day and go through Abira's home, the Gimmick Palace, you have to defeat the 6 super kids and obtain their toy parts. Go. You get some friends along the way. There's this other girl, Alyssa, this big old green guy, Sofubi, and this little mole dude, Relic. They're kinda neat, but other than that, the structure is pretty straightforward. Kinda goes for the Paper Mario chapter system, essentially. There are 6 different regions here. Obviously, there are big super bosses with these super kids at the end of them, and the layout of each of these areas, it's the same for the entire game. You start in a town, you do some quests and meet some NPCs in there, you unlock the way to the dungeon, you go through the dungeon, you fight a boss, bada bing bada boom. Before you move on to the next one, you get to stop in this little science lab, get some more abilities, and then progress to the next town and do it all over again until the game is done. But to the game's credit, the theming and the really quality sprite work does make these areas stand out. There's like also a little bit of just a weird, eerie, almost creepy vibe to some of these areas. Because yeah, the first area is just a big old toy-based zone, nothing really too ominous there, but one of the enemies is a kid with a pair of scissors. That is dangerous, you don't want to mess with that. You start off in this big old pink land that has like a weird fascination with mayonnaise, and that's kind of strange. Like the gates for some of the doors are mayonnaise bottles. That's bizarre. And then you go into an excavation site, and one of the enemies that you fight, his name is Pothead. That's what they called it, and I don't know. I think that's funny because that's what he is. You got a television studio, you go underwater for a little bit. You know, this is a toy-themed game, so there's a little bit of a Christmas aesthetic in one of the areas. And fun little fact, do you remember the weird crab Christmas tree thing from Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga? Well, that's kind of a direct reference to Tomato Adventure. It's like the only living remnants of this game and a title that people actually care about, so that's kind of cool. Obviously, there's a big food theme that is carried out the entire game. There's a lot of bright and very contrasting colors, so it's pleasant to look at. And the Super Kids themselves, they may not have like that strong of a personality, but they're imposing enough in terms of their aesthetics to make them look like, you know, pretty intimidating bosses. I think they fit the bill just fine. When I mentioned that this is kind of similar to the Paper Mario chapter setup, it's that there really isn't much that overlaps from one chapter to the other. Once you beat the boss, you like never really go over what you just went through again. You know, everything is its own secluded little bubble and then you move on. With the only thing that's really tying the entire story together are these occasional cutscenes where you see Pass Run getting messed with to get her emotions. So it's not terrible, it's not like it's super tedious, but it does get kind of repetitive, especially near the end, but that's partially due to the easy combat. The end of the game is pretty repetitive, but also the start of the game is really slow too because there's very few battle options that you have. You only have like 1 or 2 moves to deal with, you don't have an extra party member yet, so the start of the game, pretty slow. The end of the game, I could wait for it to be over. But the main bulk of the adventure, it's a fine enough time. Always curious to see what's around the next corner, what wacky NPC I'm going to walk into next, so that's cool. A little bit of AlphaDream's showing their stuff before Mario and Luigi took over. I like it. Exploration is also pretty straightforward. You got your occasional puzzles and mazes, like pretty typical stuff, just a whole lot of walking around, pressing some buttons here and there, nothing too crazy. You got some mini games too. These are kind of fun. There are these ones where you're falling down water and you have to collect a bunch of different items along the way. There's this one part where you're in a car and you're doing like a little bit of a speed run. That was kind of cool. There's also this quiz guy that you can run into multiple times throughout the adventure, and if you can solve all of his answers correctly, you get a little reward for it. So that's cool. The exploring here, it's really nothing special. There are some endearing characters for sure. Like I do like the quiz guy because he like yells at you, like just over the top of his lungs. He just yells at you just for saying hi to him. So I mean, that's kind of rude, but it gets the job done, I guess. The main thing that makes this game stand apart, though, is the battle system with the gimmick mechanic. The only way you attack with this game are these gimmicks, the gear that you get in between the main regions that I mentioned before, and they basically turn every single move you do into a mini game. You got ones that are based on button mashing, you got ones that are based on timing, you got ones that are based on counting, memorization, reflexes. They kind of run the whole gambit, but basically any form of combat here is just minigame focused. It does kind of fall in line with Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga introducing a battle system that really has not much to do with a whole lot of like tactics and like planning things out ahead of time. It's just mostly based on reflexes. That is kind of here too, because the way it works is that if you succeed at the minigame, you do a lot of damage. If you fail, you still do damage, but just a little bit. And how much damage you do after a successful gimmick is actually dictated by you in the menus, because you can choose a difficulty level of 1 to 7 for each move, just depending on how well you think you'll do on a consistent basis. Level 7, very often, being pretty difficult at times, so not every single one I was good at. So to the game's credit, perfecting these, not easy. And you do want to stay consistent because every time you do a move consistently, it builds up this awe meter in the bottom right corner. And the millisecond that you fail a move, that meter goes back down to 0. And you want it to go all the way up because once it hits the first threshold here, you can do a special move based on whichever party member that you have. And if you can make it even further and fill the bar completely, you have the option for a second move. And these are pretty devastating. They can attack multiple enemies at once, they can heal you up tremendously, they can give your enemies some status effects. These are worth doing and worth considering just what your skill level is and not try to overexert yourself, because yeah, getting really close to the end when you feel like you can use one of those moves and then you fail a gimmick and then you have to start back from 0 and then you could die because some of the bosses can be kind of tough. You know what? It's a cool mechanic. You're pretty limited too. You do get access to a lot of gimmicks throughout the entire game, but each character can only access 4 gimmicks at a time and 1 friend at a time. Demille is always in the party, but whether or not you want Alessa, Sofubi, or Relic is entirely up to you. You can even level up these moves. You get these items that you can like beef up their strength a little bit here and there, but the items that you can use are based on what category the gimmicks are in. So you know what? Like behind the scenes, there is actually a decent amount of thought that goes into just how you want to min-max every single character in the game. It still doesn't really mean a whole lot. Like it is a really easy game if you're kind of good at these mini games, outside of some bosses that do take quite a bit of time to get right. So like the main reason I was just enjoying doing a lot of these things and building up my energy for the awe moves was kind of just for the fantastic sprite work, because dude, like these animations and sometimes like the lighting gets kind of advanced. Like this is really good stuff. Like, it really shows that the developers behind Hamtaro Rainbow Rescue and that game's excellent sprite work translates here too. It's a really good looking game as far as I'm concerned. So interesting battle idea, very easy, with interesting characters and really good sprite work, and also the music is pretty catchy too. The battle theme, that also gets very repetitive. It's the same battle theme, which is, you know, to be expected, but because the battles also get tedious, the song, I was starting to really get sick of it, but the music in general, pretty good stuff. This game has all of the polish of a traditional first-party game, and that's important. So at least I knew that as I was playing this entire game, knowing that, you know, it's still a very kiddie experience, it still felt like a Nintendo game, and that's cool. There really isn't much in terms of side content, though. This is a very linear adventure. There is one card game, though, that you can build up your decks for called Gimmica. And this is neat. Like, there's a handful of NPCs that you can do this battle against, and if you were fortunate enough to know someone else with this game, you can even play against someone else in real time. That's an experience I may never get to have, because who wants to do competitive tomato adventure in the mid-2020s? But hey, it's cool that it's there. The Mario and Luigi games didn't have multiplayer, so that's cool. Another bright side with this game is that it's a pretty short adventure. It took me like 15 to 20 hours to complete. A lot of that was also because I'm playing this game emulated due to the fan translation. I was fast forwarding a lot. So, you know, if you care about that, that does obviously take down time. It's something that I felt like I needed due to the repetitive nature of some of the late game parts, but still a pretty short time. And outside of like one soft lock, where every time I kept walking into this room, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have left this room at this one time, because then every time I walked back in, the game would just like freeze and I couldn't progress. So I had to repeat like 30 minutes of gameplay. That was annoying. Outside of that though, pretty straightforward experience. But now, if you care, we're gonna talk about a little bit of spoilers now. So if you really care about this game's deep plot, skip this part. Otherwise, I just want to talk about the end game, because the game's ending blew me away. Despite some of the late game portions being pretty repetitive, the final dungeon, Abira's Tower, I actually thought this was a pretty solid final area. Because not only is it finally tomato themed, and like finally, you know, the whole tomato thing makes a lot more sense in context of the game. Like originally, like I mentioned before, the game was called Gimmick Land, and that does kind of make a little bit more sense. There's only like the start of the game that talks about tomatoes and that's it, but finally a tomato themed final dungeon. Cool. What I really like about Abira's Tower though is not only is it just like kind of more difficult, because of course that's the final area, there are portions of this area where you're doing puzzles as each of your friends. Typically your friends are just there for co-op, and they do of course pop in for cutscenes, but you never get to play as them and use their abilities in terms of exploration. But here, there's a portion for each of them. Alyssa can control a robot, Relic can dig underground, Sofubi is fat and can break through floors. That's actually his gimmick. Hell yeah. So like all things considered, this final dungeon honestly took me like 2 hours to get through. It was pretty lengthy, but at least in terms of variety, it was cool playing those extra characters. I wish the game had more of that. But you get to the top and you fight Bricky and Gricky once again. These are reoccurring bosses throughout the entire game. You fight them multiple times on the adventure. They're easy every single time, and this last time is no different. You beat them this last time and then they like start to go, oh man, this sucks. You, my partner, are the one why they keep winning, and then they want to kill each other. That was a plot twist. I thought they would go out in a blaze of glory like at the same time, but no, they kind of wanted to kill each other at the end. That was funny. But then finally, you make it to the top of the Tomato Tower, and it's time to take out Abira and save Passaran. And you know what? This boss fight is actually pretty tough. As a final fight, some of these bosses, sure, with the kids, were kind of challenging, but this one, actually, I died from this one. Oh my god. It's because there are multiple moving parts to consider at all times, and he can do multiple moves at a single time. So, yeah, had to actually consider when to take a step back and heal and worry about the next move. And you know what? This was actually a decent battle. I'm stunned. He's got this one weird form where he's holding Passaran hostage. You then find out this robot that has like barely anything to do with the plot of the entire game. He reveals that, hey, you know, Abira wanted Passaran for not only powering his laser, he also wanted to marry her. He has strong memories with Passaran. Like, okay, didn't see that coming. And then the robot and Abira fused together. Okay, and now he looks like Dr. Octopus. He's got these weird little binkies that are just coming off the sides of him, and you gotta attack those first. He's wearing a diaper. This is weird. This is a weird fight that like kind of evokes Porky from Earthbound vibes, which I didn't see coming, but you know, here we are. You do enough damage and then it turns into a Hellspawn. Dude, it's like a Kirby game all of a sudden. Okay, I dig this. But even though this fight is like the most difficult one of the game, give it enough time, you do enough damage, it is dead, and he explodes. You did it! You saved the day! That weird baby monstrosity is dead. Hell yeah. Passaran is saved! Woohoo! But, and here's the crazy part, we're not out of the woods yet. This giant tomato atop the tower flies off, all hell breaks loose throughout the entire kingdom as it lands up in the water all the way in the top right here, leaving our heroes in a mysterious new land. What's going on here? You actually have a bit of control in this final part, and that kind of blew my mind because I thought I was done, and it's not like it's a huge gameplay portion, but I had to move Demille. And I was like, wow, we're still playing this, huh? Okay. But you climb a ladder and you find yourself at the front door of the Green Pepper Tower. And this is kind of annoying because Alessa here, she hates peppers. And you know what happens when you don't like a specific vegetable? She gets kidnapped by the king of the Pepper Kingdom, Primera. Oh no, what an issue we have here. It looks like our hero's journey ain't over yet. Except it is, actually, because obviously we haven't gotten a sequel and this game is like 20 plus years old. This whole time, I didn't realize that Tomato Adventure ends on a cliffhanger. Alessa's gone, and then the credits roll. Oh my god. I mean, I guess this does leave an opportunity for there to be a sequel with like an actual new game. You just have Passaran in your party now instead of Alessa. Like, they can't actually make it Tomato Adventure 2. It would have zero impact on the gaming landscape if they do that. But like, very clearly having a cliffhanger at the end of this game, and I just didn't know this was a thing, blew my mind. But yeah, that is Tomato Adventure. This was a game I desperately wanted off my backlog because I'm such a Nintendo like enthusiast in terms of its random history with these random niche titles that the fact that this game precedes Mario Luigi Superstar Saga and obviously the rest of that series, I had to kind of feel the entirety of the origin story of AlphaDream. There is still that card-based RPG, but I'm not gonna play that. This is the first Nintendo AlphaDream game. This counts to me. So similar to The Frog for Whom the Bell Tolls, I was very grateful to play this game, even though at the end of the day, it's like a solid, I don't know, 5 or 6 out of 10. An interesting part of Nintendo history, Demille does show up in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate as a spirit, and it's Isabelle with the bunny ears, and she gets more powerful by all of the Maxim tomatoes that are falling on the ground, and it's playing Mario and Luigi battle music. Like, with the extra context that's there, that spirit makes sense, so that's kind of cool. But outside of that, I think Tomato Adventure as like a franchise is probably dead, but still happy that I played it. Probably wasted my time, didn't I? If anything, you're better off playing Hamtaro Rainbow Rescue. At least there's multiple Hamtaro games, and there's only one game that has Demille in it. So pick your poison and eat your vegetables, kids. Otherwise, you go to jail.